Alright, hello everyone, it's Pig Puncher, and today I'm finally telling a story I've wanted to tell for a long time, but I wanted to wait for the right time to tell it, and in light of the massive amount of new subscribers I've gained from my recent appearance on Destiny's stream, I think now is a better time than any. So I'm going to tell you about how I almost became AltRight. All thanks to one huge YouTube community that has become extremely popular over the last few years. It all started in 2016. Donald Trump had just been elected, and besides that, I wasn't very involved with politics. I didn't grow up in a religious household. My parents taught me that racism, sexism, homophobia, and transphobia were all wrong, and I guess you could say I was pretty left-leaning for most of my life. But when Trump was elected, I was pretty disappointed in my country, and to be fair, I was a bit depressed. I remember the day when I watched my very first anti-SJW YouTuber. His name was Raygun. The video that had popped into my recommended was called AltRighty then, and from the thumbnail, it seemed like this guy, Chris, was a Trump supporter, but when I watched the video, I realized that he wasn't. He had a very interesting on-screen personality. He did a lot of camera zooms, he spoke with a light stutter, and his sense of humor was edgy and dark, all things that would attract a 17-year-old like I was at the time to his content. I naturally subscribed to him and started watching his other content, and to be honest, it was all very agreeable to me at the time. He said he was a center-left liberal or a centrist, which sounded very reasonable to me too. Eventually, I started watching his videos on feminism. I learned about Anita Sarkeesian, Brianna Wu, and Zoe Quinn. I learned that apparently feminism is obsolete and unnecessary in Western society, that women in the West are legally equal to men in every way, and that the wage gap is a myth, and it's actually an earnings gap. I started to call myself an egalitarian and a centrist rather than a liberal and a feminist. Now, all of this is far from AltRight, but this process is slow and incremental. This is how it all started, but as time passed and I got deeper into this community, my views started to move further and further to the right. Then I started watching Shu On Head because she was mentioned in one of Chris's videos. She is considered the queen of the skeptic or anti-SJW community. Now, I want to preface this by saying I don't think Shu or Chris Raygun are bad people. In fact, Shu, for example, has been very nice to me in every interaction I've ever had with her. She's extremely polite to me in Claudia Brown's livestream chat, and she likes a lot of my tweets, but she was instrumental in my plummet into the alt-right back in 2016. Don't get me wrong, her content is pretty innocent, but her channel is centered around making fun of feminists. She mostly talks about how ridiculous BuzzFeed articles are, and it's really just solidified the belief in my head that feminism had no place in America anymore. Through collaborations and shoutouts, I naturally started watching Armored Skeptic, who, while he isn't that right-leaning, he takes a much more abrasive tone in his videos and attacks SJWs a lot harder than Chris Raygun or Shu On Head did. This is around when I started to learn about how PC culture was infecting the media that I consume. I learned how feminism was ruining Ghostbusters, forced diversity was ruining games, and instead of laughing at SJWs, I started to get hostile towards them. Going a bit further, I started watching Sargon of Akkad. He was a well-put-together guy with a British accent, and when he spoke, he sounded really smart. He ranted about immigration and how it was destroying European countries like Sweden, and I believed him. Through him, I started to not only hold much more right-leaning beliefs myself, but I started to become very accepting of much more radical conservative beliefs than my own, while becoming more intolerant to anyone who could be considered an SJW. So here's where things get a bit complicated because, in truth, the alt-right rabbit hole is not linear. Typically, once you get submerged into this community, your beliefs start to rapidly turn further right as you get further into it, and it goes from being a rabbit hole to more of an ant colony. Basically, what I'm saying here is that what happens here is kind of a blur. Other types of content that I watched started to be permeated by the anti-SJW hysteria. My friends who went down the same rabbit hole as me were enabling my beliefs, and all our political talks became echo chambers. Then PewDiePie got accused of being a Nazi by the Wall Street Journal. Now I start thinking of the word Nazi means nothing now because it's overused. In fact, I started to think that systematic racism is dead, just like sexism. I enjoyed rants about how the new Star Wars movies are SJW propaganda. I became friends and tolerated race realists and white nationalists. When people tried to counter my beliefs, I channeled Ben Shapiro and said, "Suck it up, snowflake." I had become everything that I was ashamed of only a year earlier. I frequently watched No Bullshit, Andy Worski, Lauren Southern, Stefan Molyneux, occasionally even Gavin McInnes. I was fully entrenched into the alt-right. I spammed Pepe emotes and did the OK hand signal to trigger the libs, and I was no stranger to the occasional anti-Semitic joke. I thought that all the transgender people thought that there was 12 million genders, and you better believe I bought Jordan Peterson's books. It would seem that there was no coming back from this, but one day something happened. In Charlottesville, the Unite the Right rally happened. At first, I parroted the same conservative talking point. They just want to preserve our history. But the footage of the rally was inescapable. I saw skinheads chanting Nazi salutes, Nazis talking about how they buy guns and are preparing to rally together and become a lot more violent. Then, an innocent counter-protester was killed by a white nationalist, and the very figures I supported and thought were cool people started to call it a fake news. But I saw the footage, it wasn't fake. I started to become skeptical. Not like anti-SJW skeptical, but actually skeptical. I started to reevaluate my views and consider if the political shift I'd made over the last year was a good thing. I tried to find content that challenged the beliefs that I realized were ridiculous, and there really wasn't much to find. Any left-wing content on YouTube was flamed with dislikes and hate by the anti-SJWs and the right as a whole. But there was one person who stood out and was responsible for pulling me out of the hole I'd found myself in. And I think most of you know who he is. Alright, so I'm gonna end this one here on a cliffhanger. I really wanted to get into how I escaped the alt-right in this video, but I feel like that deserves its own video as a whole, since I also want to talk a lot about left-wing YouTube, or BreadTube, in that video as well. I can't believe this massive jump in subscribers over the last 2 days. I didn't even say what my channel's name was on Destiny's stream, and hundreds of you still seeked me out and found my channel and subscribed. That honestly warms my heart, and it feels really refreshing to have new viewers and new opinions in my audience. So if you're new, make sure to join my fan Discord in the description so you can talk to me directly if you like, and leave a like and a sub if you want to support the channel. Thank you all so much for watching. Pig Puncher, out.